Coming up on today's Philadelphia Eagles Now, Jason Kelce explains why he was upset on the sideline against the Rams last week, and the outburst that he had points to the biggest issue that the Eagles are having and the lone issue that's keeping this football team back right now. We're going to dive into that and explain why. Also, we'll take a look at some trade targets in the lead up to the October 31st NFL trade deadline. All of that is coming your way right now on Eagles Now. Go Birds. Welcome into the show. This is Eagles Now. I'm Chase Sr. Thank you all for being here with us. Today's show is presented by Manscaped, the #1 leader in men's grooming products. And we have a great deal for the Bird Gang that we'll tell you about coming up here in a little while. 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com/chat. So we already previewed what's on the docket for today's show. And I want to begin with this Jason Kelce situation because I do believe that he's in the right. And I completely see where he's coming from after having those frustrations and voicing them to Nick Sirianni in that sideline situation against the Rams. The Eagles' red zone struggles are really hurting this team right now. Kelce knows it, and that's why he was freaking out on the sideline with the Eagles head coach. And here's a direct quote from Jason Kelce to kind of set the foundation for what we want to talk about with the segment here. We're lucky that we have Jake Elliott. He said on 94 WIP, we wouldn't be 5-0 without Jake Elliott. We got to get the red zone fixed. And a number of things happened in the red zone this past week. Communication issues. We had a delay of game. Multiple things build up and you start to get frustrated and it all builds up. We want to be really good. And I know that we're 5-0. But we could very easily not be 5-0. And the one glaring thing we need to get fixed is the red zone. And it's starting to become a major frustration for me, but I got to handle it better than this. I actually think Jason Kelce handled it well because we talked earlier this week about this Eagles organization being all about accountability and being able to have a culture where you can talk with one another to try to problem solve because the Eagles are not content with being a good team. They're not content with being 5-0. They want to be a dominant football team, and the red zone struggles are really constricting the Eagles from tapping into that greatness. So I think when Jason Kelce has a productive conversation like this, it can be productive in getting the message out there. And sometimes when you're an elite competitor, frustrations boil over. We see this all the time with great athletes in this game, past and present, from Michael Jordan all the way up until now. And if you put this all in perspective, this is kind of wild here, and this is where Kelce is coming from. He's the leader of this team. He's the center. He identifies what the defense is going to do. If he wants to check the play, I'm sure he's going to talk to Jalen Hurts about that, and he's a part of this Eagles offense that's struggling in the red area right now as one of the least productive teams when getting inside the 20-yard line, and he understands the importance of this particular issue. The Eagles are averaging 28.2 points per game. That is number 5 in the National Football League. Really good production in putting points on the scoreboard, but not as efficient, not as explosive, not as good at punching the football into the end zone as they were last year. And that's what made this team so difficult to defend and stop all throughout 2022. So when you couple the fact that the Eagles, number 5 in points per game scored this year, yet their red zone scoring percentage is 42.1%, which means when they get inside the 20, they're only converting those red zone trips into touchdowns at a 42% clip. That is number 27 in the NFL. Can you imagine how scary, how dominant, how difficult this team will be to stop if they start converting these red zone trips into touchdowns? There is a massive difference between 3 points on the scoreboard and 7. Also, we're not even talking about the fact that momentum has to be factored in here. Having Jake Elliott is a luxury. Do not get me wrong. You don't want to have to lean on your kicker too much, though. And right now, the Philadelphia Eagles, number 1 in field goal attempts this year. And again, Jake Elliott's been nearly automatic, but that difference between 3 and 7 points is huge, especially when you get into the playoffs. If you're taking on a team like the Kansas City Chiefs that you have to outscore, you look back at some of those red zone trips where you put up 3 points instead of a tutty, And those 4 points can be the difference in a win or a loss because the NFL is a one-score game. So Jason Kelce, totally in the right here. And when you look at how the Eagles are faring, these numbers can all improve a little bit. And if they do improve, again, you don't have to peak in September and October. There is still time to wrinkle out and iron out these issues. But the potential of this football team still at 5-0 is great and enormous. And that goes back to the conversation about the Eagles wanting to have this culture in which they can be one of the top-tier teams in this league. You wrinkle out those red zone issues. You start scoring some touchdowns. My goodness, the Birds are going to be scary. And then this defense is really starting to get it together as well. Now, offensively, you're dropping 28 points. You're giving up 20. But let's say you become a little bit better on your third down percentage because the Eagles are 30th. And then those touchdowns per game start to get limited because you're at 22nd right now defensively. And this Eagles pass rush continues to dominate time and time again. You're looking at a team that can win the NFC once again, compete with the San Francisco 49ers. Shoot, they already beat them, and then get back to the Super Bowl and this time win it. Final take here. Kelce should be frustrated. This is the biggest thing that is holding back this football team right now are the red zone issues. And Nick Sirianni has talked about it. We've talked about it plenty here on the show. Brian Johnson needs to do a little bit of a better job of using specific players and also calling better plays. And then it also comes down to the execution aspect. And all of those have bottled up for Jason Kelce. That's what led to him having that blow up on the sideline. He's a team leader. You can't make too much of it. But I like the fire for this team because they're not content with just being good. They want to be great. A lot more to get to here on the show. Eagles trade targets coming up. First, though, I want your feedback down in the comment section. I grew up in the Philly area, Westchester, went to Temple. I am a lifelong 4-for-4 Philadelphia diehard sports fan. I'm a massive Phillies fan. Are you a Phillies fan as well? Because I know we have people tuned in literally from all across the globe. Not everybody is hyper-local like me, but a lot of you who do like the Eagles, also like other Philadelphia teams, does that include the Phillies? If that's the case, I want you to type P. Citizens Bank Park last night, Game 3, the NLDS was rocking. It was the Bryce Harper attaboy game, 2 home runs that touched the moon as CBP was going crazy, and the 2 stare downs of Arcia, absolutely fantastic. It sets up the stage for what is going to be a raucous environment in South Philadelphia tonight for Game 4. And I want to know if you're a Phillies fan because you never know. We might end up doing some Phillies watch parties if they can punch that ticket to the NLCS for the second straight year and hopefully get back to the World Series for the second straight year. But this time, there's a parade down Broad Street. Coming up next on the show, Eagles trade targets. We're going to take a look at some players and some trade ideas that we put together that would net Philadelphia impact players who can help them win the Super Bowl. First, today's show is sponsored by Manscaped. As I mentioned off the rip, 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com/chat. Use the promo code chat for that deal to apply. We were talking about Jason Kelce earlier. He has a tremendous beard. If you want to increase and up your beard game, you can also do that with a new product from Manscaped, the Handyman. This thing is terrific. Skin-safe technology so you won't get nicked up right around your face. I know for me, when I shave, I'm really, really sensitive. Sometimes I wish I could just use something like this instead of a razor to avoid some of the sensitivity on my skin. And that's what Manscaped has to offer on top of all of the men's grooming products that they had that you can use below the waist, on your chest, on your back, on your neck to just look good and feel good. So with Manscaped, Halloween's coming up, right? Step it up. Halloween is what Manscaped likes to call it, to bring your face the cleanest shave that it's ever seen. So this season, no need to toil and trouble. Manscaped's all-new Handyman, the best way to get rid of that stubble, featuring a compact design, next-gen skin-safe technology. It was designed to give you that smooth finish without the mess of a traditional shave, a mess that sometimes you see with these Halloween costumes this time of year. Manscaped.com/chat, promo code chat. We'll put that link in the comment section and in the description of this video. Want to round out with some Eagles trade targets here. Players that the Birds could trade for to impact Philadelphia's Super Bowl chances, because we know Howie Roseman is always uber aggressive. And just a couple of trade ideas that I want to get to. We've talked about Jeremy Chinn a couple of times here on the show. This is a trade idea here where the Eagles could get rid of a player who I'm starting to despise in Quez Watkins. The speed is great, has never turned into consistent production, And the Panthers also get a 2024 third-round pick. The Eagles would get Jeremy Chin here. And what this gives Philadelphia, a versatile player who they nearly drafted a few years ago in Chin, who can play safety alongside Reed Blankenship, but he can also fill in at slot corner, which continues to be a little bit of an issue, although Bradley Roby did play well for Philadelphia in that win against the Los Angeles Rams. Speaking of the other team in Los Angeles, how about this trade with the Chargers? Jack Driscoll, who's kind of fallen down the depth chart a little bit. A lot of people forget that he's actually a quality backup because of how stout the starting front is for Philadelphia in the trenches along the offensive line. He goes to a Chargers team that could really use some offensive line help. Mike Williams, very good wide receiver, out for the year for Los Angeles, as it seems as though every year one of their top wide receiving targets gets injured with the season-ending injury. They fill both of those voids with Driscoll as well as Quez Watkins here. And the Eagles get a player whose father used to ball out in the midnight green toward the tail end of that Andy Reid regime. That is Asante Samuel Jr., and the Eagles also get a day 3 draft pick. This is my favorite trade idea here because of what you're giving up, the player that you're getting, and the fact that Asante Samuel, if you cut Avonte Maddox next year, he can be your slot nickel corner and a better player worth around the same price tag. What Asante Samuel to Philadelphia gives the Birds a really good young cornerback in this league who, in 3 years since getting drafted out of Florida State, has consistently been a very, very good player. This year, his overall Pro Football Focus grades pass with flying colors. Overall grade of 78.8, a run defense grade of 71.8, coverage grade 80.3. What are you paying Asante Samuel Jr. to do? Thrive, flourish, play well in coverage, have those receivers on lockdown. 80.3 overall Pro Football Focus grade in that coverage is awesome. And then 25 pass breakups in 33 career games. Why I liked him coming out of Florida State, he was a little bit smaller. And because of that, I thought that he was most likely going to be a cornerback who plays inside. And he could play outside a little bit. He's 5'10", 5'11", better suited in that slot, especially when you have Darius Slay on one side, James Bradbury on the other. With this Eagles pass rush, kudos to the linebackers for playing well. And when you have a player like this who has a knack for making plays and making plays on the football, I love the instinctual style, part of what made his dad a great and clutch player with the Patriots and the Eagles. How many big moments did he have where he read the eyes of the quarterback, baited them into making a throw, quick beat on it, pick the other way? Trade idea number 3. Mecole Hardman is kind of being floated in trade discussions right now. He was a free agency acquisition for the New York Jets. They've barely been able to use him at all this year. And last year against San Francisco, had a great game. He had 2 or 3 touchdowns. Andy Reid used him as a gadget weapon, and we've seen the Kansas City Chiefs use him in creative ways to open up some space for him, but also to get him in space, to use that elusivity and some of that speed. You get Mecole Hardman on this team. I think he's a better player than Quez Watkins. As you send out Quez Watkins to New York, you give New York a vertical threat who's a little bit more vertical than Mecole Hardman, who's more of a gadget weapon. Quez Watkins, you think about using him as a gadget guy, he's not really. So is this an offensive weapon that's better than Quez? I have a question mark there because I'm not totally sure. But you look at some of what he's been able to do over the past 4 seasons, and again, a big reason why the Jets have him on the trade block. Seldom used this year. 4 games played, 1 catch, only 6 yards. So the production hasn't been what they thought it was going to be. Kansas City in 2022, only 8 games played, 297 yards. And then a couple of years before that, 693, 560. Always a threat to kind of take it to the house. And as a red zone gadget weapon, maybe you could have him inside the 20 to cure some of these red zone struggles more so than Quez, who I think is kind of pointless when you get inside the trenches of the field, inside the 20-yard line in that red area. Another wide receiver available, I think, is Hunter Renfrow. I don't know why the Las Vegas Raiders are not utilizing him a little bit more. They have Jacoby Myers. They have Devontae Adams. They traded away Darren Waller, who, by the way, is barely doing anything with the Giants. He continues to be a stiff who's always injured. And they barely use Hunter Renfrow. Like, when you think about how the Patriots were successful in the early 2000s and really, through a lot of Tom Brady's tenure in Foxborough, they always had a Julian Edelman, a Danny Amendola, a Wes Welker out of that slot. Josh McDaniels is a Bill Belichick disciple. Why aren't they using Hunter Renfrow in the same way? He's making a lot of money, about $13 million per year, if I'm not mistaken. And you're really using a player like that who I think could really cure a lot of those Raiders struggles with Jimmy Garoppolo right now. So that's another wide receiver who, if the Eagles wanted to upgrade there, you could bring him in. Personally, I'm going to continue to pound this drum. Olamide Zaccheaus is a solid player. Please continue to use him because he's a better player than Quez Watkins. So before we hop on out of here, pick a player you want the Eagles to trade for here. A couple who we talked about, some others who we didn't. That's up to you to list those names down below. Maybe we'll feature them on a future show in the lead up to that October 31st trade deadline. And feel free to interact with me on Twitter and Instagram. When I wake up in the morning and I get to check Twitter or Instagram and I see some Eagles fans pop in my DMs, it's always great. So make sure you hit me up at Chase_Senior on both of those social media platforms. And don't be a stranger. Say what's up because it's always fun to chop it up and talk some Eagles football. We could talk some Phils too. Ring that bell. Get it done tonight at Citizens Bank Park.